songs. Welcome back, everybody, to Time to Talk. I'm Faith.
And I'm Grace.
And today, our episode is going to be about current obsessions and obsessive behavior and the way that we kind of fall head over heels in love with things. So to get us started, Grace, why don't we go about defining obsessions and what that means to us to get a better idea of how we're approaching this topic?
I think when I think of obsessions, just for myself, it really just comes back to the falling head over heels in love with something, whether that's a piece of music, an artist, an actor, books, art, and different things like that. And most of the time, a lot of that is learning as much as I possibly can about that particular thing for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I would definitely say for me, things like binge watching a show such as The Mentalist, where you watch all 7 seasons in a very short time frame, and then you do all the outside research of learning more about the actors and the storyline and what the original director's ideas were. Nope, the director's original ideas were for the story and how it developed and everything. And also music, to listening to somebody's song or album on repeat for weeks and learning all about them and everything. Are you a type of person who shares their obsessions with other people, or do you like to keep them close to your chest?
I'll sometimes share them, but I find that most of the things, about half of the time, the things that I'm obsessing over are things that I know only I would be interested in. And most of the time, the stuff I learn about my obsessions, I never actually end up sharing. So, like, in our case, I don't think I would categorize The Mentalist as one of my obsessions because, yes, I kind of binge-watched the series, but I didn't do a whole lot of outside research, so it was just watching the series. But if it would have been one of my sessions, I obviously would have recommended the series, but I probably wouldn't have volunteered any outside information on anything I learned about the actors or the director's original ideas for the TV show or things like that.
I would say for me, when I really find something that I connect with and that I want to listen to or read or watch on repeat, I tend to not share those things with other people. Sometimes it's because I connect with them in a way that it's very personal, and I don't like sharing very personal things with other people.
No, it's if I obsess over something because it strikes a chord in me deeply, I do. I have a tendency to not share those things and you just keep them close to your chest because they're special and they mean something. And those are the ones that they last longer. And I think they kind of repeat themselves too, in the sense of whenever you go back to that song or that book or that movie, it maybe doesn't strike as hard, but it still does, and it still means something.
Which is why I would say there's a difference between having an obsession over something and having a favorite, obviously, because I'm more willing to share with somebody my favorite author or something like that, because with favorites, you want other people to join you in your love of that thing and share that common interest. Whereas, yes, there's a level of personal connection that that I think on one hand is kind of almost a fear that if you were to share that with someone else, they wouldn't understand. And I don't know if it's a fear so much as a fact, like that they wouldn't understand, so why share anyway?
I agree. I think that obviously plays out differently for people, especially, and it depends on what you're obsessed with, because sometimes people will just share it because it's kind of stupid.
Like Star Wars?
That's maybe not an obsession. Okay, for some people that might be an obsession. For some people it maybe is just a favorite. But one of the things that I'm currently obsessed with, and I've actually been obsessed with it for a long time, I think fits that bucket of something that, for whatever reason, is that weird category of it both means something so much and you love it so much, and it hasn't quite reached the favorites point yet where it's no longer an obsession, but it probably will get there. I've mentioned it in passing to people, but it's also one of the things I just know that most of the people in my fan group wouldn't actually like. So I don't share it with them because I'm like, if you don't like it as much as I do, then I'm just not going to tell you about it.
Which on one hand is somewhat frustrating because, you know, when you really love something, you do want to share with people who mean a lot to you. And that it is kind of disappointing when they don't share your same level of enthusiasm for something. But I'm also just the type of person who I enjoy having things to myself. And so I don't mind if no one else appreciates this as much as I do.
It is definitely a balance between, I don't want to bore people with all the things I'm loving, but I do want to share. And so, finding the things that you can share and all enjoy. Most of the time, I think a lot of it is TV shows or things we're watching. Sometimes things we're listening to. And so it's not like I can't ever share any of my obsessions. And again, I think we've pretty much established the fact that sometimes an obsession isn't just for some reason I can't stop watching like stupid cat videos on YouTube or something. It's I found this song that speaks to my soul for some whatever reason. And so those things you do want to kind of keep close.
Right. I think you mentioned obsessions being things that you can also return to, which I believe is true. But I think the key part of having an obsession is that it expresses something you're going through in that season of life, which is why you can return to it, because you are you, and because your personality and your past experiences, your seasons will tend to have a cyclical pattern to them in a way. Since you can return to something that really spoke to you when you were 16, when you're 24 now, and you're kind of experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I thought there was another point I was trying to make when I was saying that, and I don't remember what the point was that I was going to say. So, why don't we just go ahead and jump into some of the things that we are currently loving, and possibly why we're loving them? We probably should share why we're loving them.
That may be a trickier thing to answer.
I know, it's...
Sometimes you just don't know why you like something so much.
I know, because the connection's just such on a gut level that you can't explain to someone else why you feel the way you do about something. Same with why you can't explain to someone why you hate something like Star Wars, because you just do, and it's just there, and it just is.
Because you could give all the logical reasons for why you like something and why you hate something, and it still wouldn't make sense to that other person necessarily. Because you don't always like everything about something that you love.
Yeah.
And if you had to, then nobody would be able to love anybody else. Would you like me to go first with one of my obsessions?
I think you probably have a longer list, so why don't we start with you?
Oh, that's...
I actually have no idea. But you're the one who probably has them on the tip of her tongue right now.
The first one that came to mind is a song I've been listening to, not quite on repeat, but I probably managed to listen to it at least once or twice a day. For I don't know how long I've been listening to the song. It's probably one of my longest obsessions.
Are you going to give the title?
Yes, I was getting to there. It's called Fall on Me by, I think it's Andrea Bocelli is how you say his name. And then his son, Matt, sings with him. Whenever this song came out and I first found it, till today, it's still one of my favorite songs that I listen to all of the time. And I've taken it so far that I attempt to learn the Italian. Mostly because I'm already trying to learn Italian, but also because I want to be able to sing the entire song.
So what do you love most about the song?
I don't know. See, it's one of those where just something about the music.
Do you even understand what they're saying for the most part?
I understand all of the English. And then there are pieces of the Italian.
So you understand the gist of the song?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have songs like that too, which are in different languages, and when you first listen to them, at some point you go and you look at their translation to understand generally what they're saying, because that's all you can get from a translation anyway. And then once you know music, you can understand what a song is saying without understanding the words that are being spoken.
Yeah, and I really see, this is why I'm saying the why you're obsessed with it is kind of hard for me to answer sometimes, because I think Fall on Me it's one of the ones that, for whatever reason, when I first listened to it, just hit me really hard. And it was, I think I started crying the first time I listened to it. Again, I didn't know why. Just something about it's simultaneously melancholy and just sad, and also incredibly joyful and light and hopeful. And both of them have angelic voices. And the music is gorgeous.
And you've always been an Andrea Bocelli fan, so it makes sense. But he's the only opera singer that you really like or follow, I guess. Right? You're not much into that genre beyond him.
I used to listen to, there's another Italian opera singer who's good. There were a couple women I followed, and then kind of in the category right outside of that would be like Josh Groban, somewhat Michael Bublé. Her name's Catherine, I think. Catherine someone.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I think she sang with Jackie Evancho.
Yeah, she did.
I think who would also, at least her older music when she first started, would have fallen into that category. I enjoy it. I used to listen to it a lot more. Literally an entire playlist of opera and those kinds of songs, and I would just listen to it. And I still really enjoy it, and several of the songs made it into my main playlist that I just play all the time. But I think at the times I was listening to it for whatever reason, that genre just, I needed it at that moment.
Same. Yeah, I had an opera phase. I've completely gone away from that now, and I like pieces that have a faster rhythm to them now. But then again, I will always love songs like Once Upon a December, those really big, giant pieces that have that slower pacing and the chorus behind them and the big over-the-top production. Granted, that's also a Broadway piece, hence the over-the-top production too. But
see, that is Broadway. There's a whole category of musicals in Broadway that I wasn't talking about at this point in time.
That's what I'm saying is, but I think in general, opera is one of those that it's just very dramatic and very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's not, like, you're not snobbish to like opera, but it takes a certain level of gentility, I think, is kind of what I think when I think opera.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people nowadays just don't, at least in the circles we run in, and I think it's safe to say most people in general don't appreciate opera like they used to, like it used to be.
There's a lot of things, Grace, that people don't appreciate like they used to.
I was going to say something. So I was trying to describe that second layer of songs, and it kind of fits for some of them, but I was just thinking a lot of them are like big band songs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And since we were talking about that, I was going to say, one of my other long-standing songs that kind of, it wasn't really an obsession, but it was just something, again, that I listened to a lot, was the Somewhere Beyond a Sea. I like the version that, I believe it plays in Captain America the First Avenger, is the version that I love.
Is this a song that Peggy and Steve dance to?
I think so. It's the Somewhere Beyond the Sea. Da, da,
Somewhere
da,
waiting
da,
for
da.
me.
Yes.
Da, da, da,
yes,
da.
I think it's the song they end up dancing to at the very end, but it's most of the time it's played in the actual movie. Yeah, most of the time it's played in the actual movie. It's all instrumental.
That's a song that when we go dancing at big band nights that they tend to play very often. I love that song.
There are just songs that I will hear over and over again that I love them.
There are some songs that they just get so stuck in your head that whenever you hear someone, start singing a melody or say a certain phrase, that's just that song is what pops into your head. Whether or not you like it, it's just there, ingrained. Yeah, that's a good song. For me, if we're going to stick with the music obsession,
yes,
at the end of May this year, you know, some people go on YouTube and look for stupid videos on things. Mine is I will search one of two things, which is either something to make me laugh because I'm really sad, or I'll just start looking for different types of singers because I'm sad, or I'm bored. Both, really. Either one. Make me laugh, make me sad. I'm either sad or I'm bored. So I was looking for the latter option, the singers, and I came across this video which was just a bunch of clips of like most amazing singers ever. And the very first one was this boy, and he was singing Chandelier, and I never have heard a voice exactly like his. It was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate using the phrase, it was like an angel. But honestly, it was. There are some people who just, when I use that, I guess I mean, you know, some people have so much control over their voice that it's a whole new level of singing that it's like, you almost can't tell it's not a human singing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I kind of got hooked on that clip, and I was just scrolling through the comments, which again, I don't generally read comments, so why I was doing this, I don't know. I will forever be grateful I did. But I was just scrolling through comments, and I saw a lot of people commenting on that first video, and they're like, oh my gosh, that boy is amazing. Does anyone know who he is? And I think I got like 3/4 of the way down the comments until I finally saw someone reply saying, yeah, this is this person, this is where he lives, this is the type of music he sings, you should really go follow him because he's amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go check this person out now because, you know, most of those videos, it's just people singing someone else's song and they're not actually singers themselves, and so there's really nothing to follow. So I thought, oh my goodness, this guy actually is a singer. I could go follow him and hear more. So I want to say his name, but I butcher his name every single time because he's a Belgian singer. And I don't really know how you're supposed to say it. And I looked at the pronunciation. And, of course, the U.S. version of how you pronounce his name is awful because we literally can't say anything. So I'm going to, just do a hodgepodge of his name, which is Loïc Nottet.
She's questioning it now.
I'm questioning it. You know, just like I question Benedict Cumberbatch. I always question this name, too. There are some names that you just go, ooh, and you make a face at yourself when you say them.
It the right way?
I know.
Scans the room to see if anyone is, judging her for how she pronounced it.
Yeah. Just like a phrase such as faux pas or something. You know, there's those phrases or those words that you just, there's that little hitch before you say them because you question whether or not you're actually going to pronounce it correctly.
Or if you used it in the right context.
Or, yes, true. Because side note, on the faux pas, there was somebody recently who was saying the word faux, but they said it incorrectly. They said it with the, how do you spell it? Is there an X in it? Mm-hmm. Okay. They were saying it with the X or something. I can't remember now how they were incorrectly pronouncing it, but they were, and they said it about 3 times in the space of 1 minute. And no one corrected them, and I was just thinking, are we all being polite here, not correcting them? I mean, it wasn't really the place to correct them, so we were being nice and not correcting them, but I was also thinking, does everyone else actually think this is how you say the word? Because it's not how you say the word. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was a complete side note. So back to Loïc Nottet. So I proceed to then go and find all of his songs on Spotify, which at this point was one full album, and then he had a Halloween album, and then a couple other singles. And I start listening to those on repeat. I find everything on YouTube that I possibly can with him, music videos, interviews, blah, blah, blah. He's also a dancer, too. So he actually got his start as a singer in a Eurovision contest in 2015. And I think he won 5th for the song that he wrote. And then he competed in the French version of Dancing with the Stars and won 2 years after that or something. So anyway, I proceed to go down a massively long rabbit trail to find everything that I can about him. Unfortunately, he is Belgian, and so my Google skills are decent, but they're not good enough that I know how to find out something about a relatively unknown Belgian singer, songwriter.
Being able to Google in Belgian.
Right. Or somehow, yeah, I don't know. So I found out what I could, which was enough to keep me happy. There are still many things that I would like to know about him that I can't find. But anyway, what made me super happy is the day that I found him, it was a week later that he released his second album.
Ah, perfect timing.
I know, it was perfect timing because it just meant that my obsession has been continued on. And I don't do this now, but about the first month that I was listening to him, that was literally the only music I listened to. And every single day I would listen to one of the albums, if not both of them. I actually started a habit of taking really long bike rides that I would listen to both albums. And I had it down to a science of when I would leave and start the music and when I needed to turn around to start heading back home so that I would end on the very last song of the second album. Sometimes I would even make them longer bike rides and listen to every single one of his songs. Those ones would turn into like 2 hours, 2.5 hour long bike rides. Yeah. It was fun though. It was very fun. And I'm pretty sure everyone on the trails thought I was crazy because I ended up semi-choreographing dances, which I'm on my bike, so it includes only my hands and like some shoulder sways. So it looked really weird, I'm sure, to everybody. But I would dance and I would start singing. So there were certain songs that I would try to purposely ride to a part in the trail that I knew no one else is really there so that I could sing to the song while I was riding. It became an art form, Grace. Anyway.
I mean, you can call it that.
Bike dancing is a thing. It should be the new thing on Broadway, you know? That. Just like Gene Kelly went around and sang and danced on roller skates, I think I should now bring it to bikes, and we should sing and dance on bikes.
Well, they already use hula hoops and jump rope.
Right, and they use umbrellas. I mean, a bike just becomes another prop.
There might actually be something out there with a bike already.
There is. I mean, just like you have roller skating competitions where they are like really professional level roller skating. That's the same thing with bikes. They have people who ride bikes and compete in competitions, and it's like gymnastics with a bike, and they'll do tricks on the bike, you know, and they'll stand up on the seat and they'll do a handstand on the bar between the handlebars and the seat.
Can I just say things like that, like rhythmic gymnastics amazes me, because normal gymnastics is incredibly difficult, and then you start throwing around that all of your tricks have to be done with a ball or a ribbon
or a hoop
or
you have that trampoline thing
and you have to catch.
That you get like 10,000 feet up in the air on.
Oh, that just scares me.
That terrifies me.
That scares me.
I mean, I can't even do a somersault without freaking myself out. So.
Okay.
I'm very serious. I used to like have no issue with doing the backward somersault, but now it takes me a while to talk myself into doing a forward somersault because I always think I'm going to break my neck. Granted, I'm doing it in concrete floor most of the time. Not that I do somersaults all the time. This was like one time that for fun I just decided to do a somersault, and I was doing it on a concrete floor. Hence, I had more reason to be scared of snapping my neck. Anyway, back to obsessions. That is my current music obsession, and it still is. I don't listen to it as much anymore. What I've changed to is that's like 50% of my current favorites playlist. And Taylor Swift, who was an obsession for a while, and by her I mean her Lover album and her Reputation album, and a couple pieces from 1984. It is 1984? Okay. For a second I thought it was 1989. I couldn't remember. But those 3 albums are kind of the ones that I have of hers. Is it 1984 or is it 1989?
Now you're having me rethink it.
Now I'm second guessing.
I have a feeling.
Okay, see, it's because I basically
when was she
only
born?
like.
Because I
don't know the answer to that question. By her, I don't. She's not the obsession that I wanted to learn everything about her.
No, but I'm saying I'm pretty sure the album, the year it's dated is the year she was born. So now I'm questioning the 1984.
She's like 30 this year. She's turning 30.
Well, or she is 30, and that means she's maybe 31.
So that would be 1989 or 1990. So it would be 1989. I was correct. Why were you correcting me when I was already correct? It's 1989. Okay. Anyway.
Because I clearly follow Taylor Swift.
I don't follow her. I just like some of her songs. So anyway, those make up, just because there's a lot of them, and my favorites playlist is very small. I think I only have about 110 songs.
Wow.
Yes, because I get bored of songs quickly if I really don't like them. So anyway, I have Loïc Nottet, Taylor Swift, and a mixture of other songs. And so I've just come into a habit of I'll just play my playlist on shuffle because I know that there's enough in there that I'll get his songs that I like and I'll get the other songs that I like. Anyway, this carried me into a French pop season,
which is actually really good.
Which is actually very good. It is.
Granted, they could be saying awful things.
Well, that's pretty much anything. I mean, it's.
Let's be honest.
I would prefer
kind of risque
to
too,
have someone else say something terrible in their language and I don't understand it and I can like the piece of music versus them saying something bad in my language and I unfortunately like the piece of music but then feel guilty for liking the piece of music because they're saying terrible things.
Okay.
Yeah. It was actually interesting. There was one interview that I was watching with Loïc where he was talking about the songs that he writes because he is one of those songwriters who is very personal in his songs.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a way that, you know, it's obviously personal and you couldn't actually pinpoint
Mm-hmm.
a situation in which it happens. Like, there's one song that he writes about people making fun of his voice because he does have a higher pitched voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you first listen to him, you can't mistake him as a girl. And so he writes a song about that and he writes a song about bullying and things. So they are somewhat personal songs. And so in this interview, he was talking about the fact that he only has one song in French, and he had steered away from writing anything in French, which is his native language, for years because English, you know, he understands English,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that second language. So when he's writing in English, it kind of distances him from his songs so that it makes it more comfortable for him to sing about these personal things because they're not as close to home,
Mm-hmm.
which I found very interesting because in many ways I resonate to that too. You know, it's why I like when I talk about very vulnerable things, you know, I'll do it in a presentation to people because it provides that distance between it being a one-on-one conversation and me not having prepped for that one-on-one conversation, just saying what comes to my mouth versus I've spent a long time curating what it is that I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think the reason why I'm obsessed with him is, one, because I think a lot of his songs just speak to me where I am in my life. They're also he's just a fantastic songwriter. I don't know if that's the
songwriter.
correct term. Like, he does, most of the time, like, most of his songs, he either writes by himself or co-writes them with other people, but he does a lot of the actual music part of it, too.
Parts of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know what the correct term is. But he's very talented at what he does. And then combine that with all of the extraneous research I did on him and the interviews I listened to. There's just a lot of things that he says that I'm like, yes, I resonate to this very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the musical obsessions for both of us.
I was just going to mention, since you started talking about the language, I think that's part of the reason I loved especially Italian opera at first, but also other kinds of operas and just other songs in general, was sometimes I didn't know what they were saying, but if I had looked at a translation and could understand the gist of what they were saying, it was like they said it so much better. And it sounded better than if you were to do it in English. And oftentimes other languages just have better ways of saying how you're feeling at times.
Oh, I really want to find this now. I was on Pinterest the other day, and I saw a post. You know, I never knew what Tumblr was, and I was never on Tumblr. I don't even know if Tumblr exists anymore.
I have no idea.
But, you know, you can find them all on Pinterest, the best ones, and I sometimes appreciate when they come up because they tend to be very amusing. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been a platform I would have liked to be on, possibly. Anyway, I came across one that was something about German. Mm-hmm. And this person's, I really want to find it because I always tend to butcher these things when I attempt to describe what they were and what they said.
I'm assuming this was about one of those German words that it's hard to translate. Okay,
so I found the post, and obviously I'm going to butcher the German word, but I'm going to read it to you. And there's probably a German compound word for that feeling you get at 2 a.m. when you're single in your mid-20s and the creeping doubt that you've somehow missed your only chance at love because you didn't meet someone in college and now it's too late strikes. The German word you are looking for is Torschupanik, or I don't know. I'm going to...
Just quick Google
it's
on
terrible.
Google Translate to figure out how to say this word in German.
Let's see if we can play this. Pronunciation. Torschlusspanik. Torschlusspanik? It sounds like that.
How do you say it?
Torschlusspanik. Torschlusspanik. Okay, Google says that it's supposed to be pronounced Torschlusspanik.
Again, we could be completely messing that up.
I don't know. But anyway, so the response is, the German word you were looking for is Torschluspanik, and it means gate closing panic, sense of anxiety or fear caused by the feeling that life's opportunities are passing by and diminishing as one ages. And then this response is, Germans have a word for literally everything. German is like the dictionary of... Oh, dang.
Emotions?
No, German is like the dictionary of obscure sorrows, is what another person says.
Yes.
And it's literally true. Germany, for some reason, their language is... I don't know if it's because for some reason they just are a more philosophical people.
Well, and part of it
or
is,
they just had a lot of philosophers, but their language just seems to be so chock full of words that just express a very deep feeling and a very deep meaning on state of humanity. Like, they just have that perfect word to describe the most obscure feeling ever.
Well, what is it? They have the one word that describes basically how you feel if you're out walking through the forest by yourself and just completely present in that space of nature.
I really want to know who kind of created the German dictionary. I would have loved to have met that person who's just walking in the forest by themselves and they're like, I need a word to describe exactly where I am right now.
I wonder if part of it is, it seems like, and this is coming from a very limited knowledge of German, but for some of the big words that I know that they actually completely made up and then other languages found out words to translate them, it seems like I don't know if they still are, but it used to be a lot freer than other languages I know in terms of combining words.
Yeah.
To make the compound words.
I mean, that makes sense.
And so it wasn't always necessarily about creating an entirely new word to describe how you feel in the forest when you're walking by yourself.
Granted, all of the English comparisons I'm thinking of are words such as confuzzled or...
We don't have very good words.
I just
like
hate
that.
English in general. It's an ugly language, and it's a confusing language, even for someone who speaks English.
Some of the words are pretty. But yeah, I guess
what I don't like is when people tend to make up words for things, they just always sound or you make them in such a way that they have to have hyphens instead of actually being this one word that just flows naturally together.
I feel like our temptation is to shorten words versus...
No, that's Aussies.
Well,
Aussies
shorten words
everything.
in the sense of making them slang.
You mean slang?
Things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not shorten it in terms of abbreviating absolutely everything just 'cause.
Granted, I'm sure not every day will you hear a German saying Torschluspanik because it's probably not a common word, and I probably forgot a syllable in that word
We just
already.
said it incorrectly already.
I don't know. The only German phrase that I really know is Ich liebe dich. And good morning, and that's not how you say it.
Morgen.
Good morning. And Guten Tag or something. What does that mean? Right? That's a German word?
Yeah, I think that...
Is it like hello or something?
No.
I don't know. All I know is Ich liebe dich means I love you. And then obviously it's good morning. And there's just a couple other phrases because one of our grandmothers is German. So she never taught anybody German in her family for many reasons. But anyway, she still speaks it relatively fluently and reads it pretty fluently. And so growing up, we would just have those key phrases between grandma and granddaughter that we would say to each other. Anyway, we've done it again where we've taken a complete rabbit trail and talked for the past 5 minutes.
My apologies, because that was totally my fault.
Yes, it was a good rabbit trail though. Back to, so we talked about our musical obsessions. I don't really want to talk about any movie or show obsessions just because we did recently record one on movies, and then we did recently record one on books too, so I don't know if we... Books are also something that I don't typically have an obsession about.
No, I have book series that I will read, and books that I will read over and over and over again, but I'm not the kind of person who reads a book and then the instant I finish it, I go back and start it over again. I know those people exist, but I like that sense of knowing you've completed the book and also at the same time hating the fact that you've completed the book because you didn't want it to end. And then you have to let it sit with you, because otherwise you're going to go back and the second reading isn't going to be the true second reading it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm very much that type of person who falls in love with a book and gets to the end and then sits in stone cold silence for the next 2 days because I can't function.
World just ended. It's kind of what I feel like. There's nothing else in life that is going to satisfy me as much.
A book hangover is the great way to describe it because that is true. What it feels like.
It is such a hangover.
And sometimes it's because the book was so good and the ending was perfect. And sometimes it's also because you wanted to throw the book across the room because you literally hate the ending.
And most of the time,
or you throw it across because you loved it so much and it was like really touched a chord in you that you had to express that in some way, shape, or form.
And at the end of the day, it's just because you feel like there's literally nothing else that will ever do the same thing for you.
Like, I think one of the first books, well, the book that comes to mind when that happens is, there's 2 of them. One is a children's fiction piece, which is called Straw into Gold. It's by Gary D. Schmidt, and it's a sort of retelling of Rumpelstiltskin in that fairy tale. Mm-hmm. I think it qualifies as a retelling, but it's extremely different.
It's based on that story.
Yeah, you can't even really tell that it is Rumpelstiltskin because I don't know if it's a retelling or if it's like an add-on. Because for the most part, the original story of the miller and his daughter and the daughter going to the castle to spin gold and then marrying the prince, that all happens. Granted, there's different reasons attributed to the different characters and different personalities put onto them, but for the most part, it stays true to the original.
We'll say it's a retelling.
Yeah, so I don't know if it classifies. Anyway, that book, oh my gosh, when I got to the end of it, I read it in one day, because it is pretty short, and I read it in one day, and it's probably like 10 o'clock at night that I finish it, and I just sit on my bedroom floor, and I'm just sobbing for a while. It's not a very sad book, but it is sad, too, and I don't know, I don't want to spoil the book, but the protagonist, the boy, it's kind of heartbreaking. Like, it's a very bittersweet ending, and you just kind of want to reach through the pages and hug him and hold him, too, and comfort him. So, yeah, that is one that I definitely ended in that book hangover mode, and like I said, was just sobbing on my bedroom floor. The other one is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. That book, again, I don't know why. Apparently, I have this thing for the retelling of myths and fairy tales, because that one is a retelling of the myth of Mars and... Nope, now I'm going to completely forget who all this is. It's Persephone and... Dang. Is it not the retelling of Persephone and the god of the underworld, correct? Because the original story is, I don't remember her mother's name, but her mother is like the goddess of summer or something, and the goddess of the seasons. And the god of the underworld, which in Greek would have been Hades, right? Okay. He comes in, he kidnaps her daughter and takes her down to the underworld.
Who is it in Roman mythology?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I get the Greek and the Roman names confused all of the stinking time.
Okay.
And I don't remember all of them and any of them and how they connect. Anyway, so he kidnaps the daughter and marries her, and so then it ends up that she has to live half the year in the underworld and half the year above, and that's why you ended up having seasons, is because she's in the underworld during fall and winter, and so her mother's saddened, so she doesn't take care of the earth, and it kind of just goes cold and barren, and then when her daughter's comes up, that's when you get spring and summer, because now her mother's all happy and
and that's
full of life.
That's the original myth.
That's the original myth, and I think that's what it's based on. But in the retelling, the reason why I said Mars is because I think that's the god in the retelling is he's not.
She mentions him.
He's not the god of the underworld. That's all I know. I don't actually know if the name is ever mentioned, but I want to say it's not. I know it's not the god of the underworld. Anyway, that is one that I absolutely fell in love with, and I resonated very deeply with the girl who's the protagonist, and it's also one that leaves you like feeling sick to your stomach in a good way, and then it takes you a while to recover from it. So now that I've rambled on about books, which I said we weren't going to talk about.
Well, you mentioned two.
Yeah, I
did
mention
two of your books that qualify as obsessions.
Do you want to reciprocate and talk about books, or do you want to move
why
on?
were you talking about them? We were talking about them because of book hangovers, right?
I think, well, yeah, because we were talking about the fact that you can't really... we don't really have obsessions with books the same way that we do with other things. And I will also say that books, I tend to be more open to sharing my favorites of those with other people.
Okay, so, well, for the sake of just mentioning 2 that have recently given me book hangover, I will say The Pearl. Both of these are by John Steinbeck. That's kind of weird. The Pearl, which is a very short story by him, and then East of Eden, which is a significantly longer story
I love East
by
of
him.
Eden. What is The Pearl about?
The Pearl is about a man, his wife, and his young son in basically it's kind of ambiguous where they actually are at. I think they're somewhere in New Mexico or something like that, because they're indigenous people in like a Pueblo town, but they live in tents. But when they go into town, it's like Pueblo town where the white people are. So it's this weird thing where I'm pretty sure it's in America, but it involves the ocean, so they have to be somewhere where they could be in the ocean, whether that's the Gulf or not. You really don't know where they are.
Okay.
And the only characters you really know are this man, his wife,
Are they
his young
named?
son. Yes. His name, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. His wife's name is like Yana. Again, this would be assuming that you have to say the J with an H sound, because it's Juana is her name. And then his son's name is like Coyotito, is his little baby son's name. And then Juan Thomas is his brother, and his brother's wife, her name starts with an A. But those are the only other people named, because the doctor just goes by doctor and something like that. But the story is literally a day, basically, is what happens. And it starts at night, and it goes to like the next night, basically. And so what happens is, what starts the entire story is that a scorpion goes and bites his son, stings his son. So like they're really afraid he's going to die, and they don't know how they're going to pay to get him healed. And so all of the people in their little tent village are all like pearl harvesters, basically. And so they have to go out into their boats and dive down and get these oysters to get these pearls. And most of the time he's had really bad luck, and so he gets very little from the pearl buyers. Then this particular day, he happens to find what's then called the Pearl of the World. It's this big, beautiful pearl that like everyone is now starting to obsess over. And so the doctor comes, and he's thinking, well, he's like, you should keep it safe at my house, because I actually have a safe to store it in. But really, he's like, I just kind of want the money, and I want to get this, and these people don't deserve it, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes and takes it to the pearl buyers, and none of them want to actually offer him the real value, and they start making it like the person he takes it to says, oh, this pearl's actually completely worthless because it's too big. And he gets all the other pearl buyers to come, and they all say the same thing to try and lie to him and get it for like the cheapest they possibly can, when it's really actually worth a whole lot. And so they go back that night, and they're sleeping, and these people come, and they try and attack him to get the pearl. And so he ends up almost killing this first person. And so kind of to try and calm himself down, he tries and does that, and while he's not looking, his wife goes and takes the pearl, and she walks down to, I think it's her who walks down to the beach, and she's gonna throw it away because she's just like, this is causing way too much hassle. The only people in our town who actually like us anymore are your brother and our sister-in-law, and everyone else is just out to kill us, and our son's not getting any better, and this is just causing you to go mad because you don't know what to do with this.
This is a really intense story.
This is what I'm saying. This book is maybe just over 100 pages long, and it's chock full of life,
edge of the seat,
and what wealth can do to people and everyone involved. So they take it down, and somehow like they fight together, and he hurts her, and he actually ends up killing a person who comes and attacks him, and she's just like, you're going insane, I don't know what to do. He finds out his boat's been ruined, which is like, it's been passed down from his grandfather, and it's their only way of making a livelihood. So now they literally have nothing. So they go, and they have to hide with his brother and sister-in-law for the morning, while everyone's trying to search and find them, because their house has been burned down. People realize their boat's gone. There's a guy that's dead. So they're hiding, and so they wait till, I guess it takes place over 2 days, because they wait until the evening, and then they have to hightail it out of there. And keep in mind that their son is still slightly sick from being stung by a scorpion.
Poor boy.
So they go, and they go out at night, and they have to stop somewhere when it gets to day and sleep and rest. But then they find out that people have sent out these trackers to them, which are like basically white guys who hunt animals for a living and have guns. And they don't have any weapons. He just has like a big butcher knife, basically.
And a big pearl. That's all he got.
Uh-huh. Yes. So they go on this journey, and they eventually know that the trackers are on them. So now their only goal is to just get away, as far away from these trackers to possibly outwit them. So they climb up this mountain, and they find this cave, and the trackers for the night go right below them, and they have a campfire and stuff. And so he goes, and he's like, how can I possibly, my only goal is to get the gun first, so that then I can kill these guys before they kill me. So this whole thing happens. His son accidentally makes a noise, so they realize that they're in the cave. They don't see him, but they know that people are up there. So they shoot up there a couple times before he attacks them and basically kills almost all of them. I think he kills maybe 3 of them and 1 gets away or something, or he maybe kills all of them. But then the real zinger is, they killed his son. Uh-huh.
No.
Uh-huh. No.
I don't even know the story, and I'm like, no. No, you killed the boy.
They killed the boy because it was just enough that the way they shot him.
Okay, I'm like really sad
They
right
basically
now.
shot off the back of his head. And so he comes up, and his wife just sobbing and holding his son because he's dead. So they have to go, and they go all the way back to the village, and they throw the pearl away and get rid of it. So the entire story is basically what the idea of so much wealth does to a community and to a family and to people, and how a lot of the times it's actually awful and it's not worth it. And
so it just popped in my head. I don't actually know if Steinbeck was a believer.
He wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't.
Well, then this is just proof evidence that God writes his word into people's hearts, and they just know. Mm-hmm. Because the verse that literally popped into my head is that, what is it? You can have the world and lose your soul? Or something. Do you know what verse I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's like, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world
but lose his own soul? Okay, and that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. It's literally, you have this pearl, which is called the pearl of the world, in your hands. You're literally holding the world, and you lose your soul. Mm-hmm. And you lose your son's soul. And it's like, life suffers when you try to have more than you were created to have.
So as you can imagine, this just over 100-page short story was a complete wreck of my life for this one, since I had other books I was trying to read. It was about a day, but it was, yeah.
I haven't even read it, and I'm still sitting here like shook by the boy's death.
Mm-hmm. You'll have to read it, but you'll have to try and forget what I said. Although, even if you don't, it's such a good book. It is such a good book. When we first were introduced to John Steinbeck, our very first read from
was The
him
Grapes
was
of Wrath, and my goodness
and
gracious,
at that
that
point in
was hard.
time,
we were only 14 at this time, too.
Yes.
And literally every other word is a curse word, so...
And that's what turned me off,
rough.
and I didn't enjoy the story because I was so hung up on the language that they were using, and I just didn't enjoy it.
And it's Steinbeck, and the thing is, his books tend to be much slower paced, even if they are a short story. Like, they just have... It's either a shorter time frame, like you said, where it's a 2-day window, and it just... His settings are obscure, and so it's a very different writing style. And Grapes of Wrath is during the Dust Bowl, too, and they're moving their family across the West to California to go pick oranges or something. So it's it was a very different book than anything that I had read at that point in time, and
I need to go back and
the
read
language
it,
turned me off, and the characters turned me off because they were pretty much jerks.
I think I would like it now, because I've read several of his shorter stories.
I have a context to appreciate Steinbeck now.
Yes.
Before, I didn't even know who this person was.
But I was going to go back to what you said of asking if he was a believer, and I was going to say, I think the reason he hits upon so many of those truths is because, one, he was in the modernist time, but he was one of those more realist people. So he just tells life as it is, right? He's incredibly blunt. A lot of his characters are just blunt, and a lot of them are just not nice people. But all of them are just trying to make it and just do the best they can with what they have. And so he hits upon a lot of those hard truths about life, because he's not cushioning it, and he's just saying this is what it is like.
The thing that came to mind when you were saying that is, and this could just be, my guess is just a current day cultural Christian kind of thing that you're brought up to think this way, where you always have to qualify your statements about how much life is broken and painful and suffering, where you always have to tag on this statement of hope, which I understand that, yes, in Christ we do have hope outside of this world, but to a certain extent it becomes cliche in that you always have to see the silver lining, and thus it kind of diminishes. I'm saying all of this with qualifications because it depends on how you say it and how you're talking about it and whatever, that the silver lining can seem cliche and lessen the impact of what you're saying. Anyway, I was saying that because there's another author, Oscar Wilde. Picture of Dorian Gray is Oscar Wilde. I would never have wanted to be his friend because, oh my gosh, was that man a horrible person. Pervert in many ways.
Horrible person.
Yes, awful, terrible, terrible. But his ability to capture the evilness of man in a way that you relate to it and you see yourself in Dorian as much as you hate and despise Dorian and Lord Henry.
You see yourself.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is me.
Three characters, and you're just like, wow.
And the artist and his desire to be good is very relatable, you know? And when we were reading it for class that one time, I don't know when this happened or how this happened, but there was a point in time, it was before classes started that day, and Mr. Hudson, who taught the class, and one of his friends was there to observe the class. And I went over to talk with them, and we somehow got on this topic of the picture of Dorian Gray. And Mr. Hudson's friend made a comment about, for some reason, authors who are not believers, if they're good authors, someone like an Oscar Wilde, they have this ability to capture the brokenness of the world and dive into the depths of sin in a way that many Christian authors are never able to do. You know, and maybe it's because of the fact that they do have personal experience with that because that's their lifestyle.
Well, I think almost that lack of hope or it's not even there's something about they lack this like pressure to find the purpose in the suffering. And so in that sense, they have total freedom and they're not scared to go to those places.
Because that is what life is for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would make sense. And because if you truly believe that this life is the only one that exists and the only purpose of your life is to get as much pleasure as you want, then the lengths of sin that you're going to go to achieve that and still be unhappy at the end is... Anyway, I find it fascinating. And it's, side note, a reason why I believe that you should read and you should read a lot of things and not pigeonhole yourself to one type of genre or one worldview. Again,
I love how I said I was going to mention 2 books quickly that have wrecked my world, and we've now been talking for 20-30 minutes maybe on this. I was
describing our podcast to some friends the other night, and they said, what is it about? And I told
them, we don't know. Good question.
I went on to describe, well, we recorded this episode on movies and ended up turning it into a topic on censorship and history, and then this one on books, which turned into pet peeves that we have of authors, and that's just going to be how our podcast is. We'll start out with a topic and it turns into an entirely different topic, which is great because then it means that we can record another episode on the actual topic that we were supposed to be recording on.
Yes. So truth is, we need to do an entire podcast episode more on, like, there will be multiple podcast episodes where we mention books and authors and reading because that's just part of our lives. So I won't say anything that I was going to add to this conversation. We could just move on if we need to move on.
So basically, the only obsessions that we currently covered in this episode were music.
Okay, so quick, what's another, and this actually needs to be quick, what's another one obsession that you have right now?
I don't know if I have another obsession right now, because there's a show, but I don't want to mention the show because I don't want to get into that topic.
Okay.
And I don't think I have. Like, there's not any current drink or food I'm obsessed with.
Was there recently in the past 3 months?
Does peanut butter count?
Sure, peanut butter counts. You love peanut butter.
Peanut butter and coffee.
So... other than which we've already probably mentioned my obsession with oatmeal and just how much I love it for food, the recent obsession I have is watching all of the like acrylic paint pouring videos. I love these things so much. I don't know why, but they're just gorgeous. So eventually I'm going to actually attempt my own of them. But yes, I'm currently obsessed with watching. I subscribe to a couple YouTube channels that do these, and I'm just fascinated by them.
does skincare count as a current obsession? Because I would say that is probably,
if you watch
on
a lot
YouTube
of them,
specifically. I found this esthetician on YouTube, and
okay,
I've literally been watching her videos all the time.
then
One,
yes,
because I just need to know that for my personal
yes,
self.
that counts.
I realized the other day that when I was talking to our sister Lane, I was starting to talk about, well, this is exactly what you need for your skincare routine and blah, blah, blah. I've become like a wannabe expert on this topic because I've now learned so much about it.
No, see, an obsession doesn't necessarily have to be something you just like. It can also be something you like and want to learn a lot about. And so for you, it can be that.
Okay,
for me,
before we go, here's the other thing that I'm going to... Sorry, I just interrupted you.
me. Never mind. It doesn't matter.
No,
everyone knew what I was going to say.
I promised I would use this in another episode, and I'm going to use it now.
Oh, dear.
So last night I was with friends, and one of them proceeds to talk about this new show on Netflix with Zac Efron.
Oh, the Down to Earth thing?
Yes, where he travels around the world exploring all of these different sustainability techniques and practices. And she was talking about the second episode that he does, which is on water and the mineral content of water, and proceeds to explain that there is this water in Siberia, which is actually illegal in the United States. Why? I don't understand. But they got it approved. They got this like 1 8-ounce cup of water approved for the show. And there's this water sommelier, which is, you know, that you have like wine sommeliers who taste the wine and stuff, and are
basically like the people who know a good wine and a bad wine.
Yes.
Like they do for olive oil in Italy a lot.
Right.
So
taste it and I didn't realize this. I always thought the connoisseur was the one who was the taster.
No, connoisseurs
but
are
they're the
normally
ones who
amateurs.
make it.
Well, and in terms of being like a wine connoisseur, it's normally an amateur who just wanted to learn a lot about wine. So it's not...
No, I think the correct word. I don't know. I haven't actually looked this up, so I'm kind of just repeating what she said, and I don't know if she looked it up or if it was explained. But the difference was connoisseurs are the ones who are the experts at making it, and sommeliers are the ones who are the experts at tasting and actually identifying...
Interesting.
What's
I'll have
in
to,
it or
I'll
something.
have to look
I don't know.
this up because...
Anyway, so they have this water sommelier in this episode, and he's talking about the mineral content in the water and what you need to look for in water, okay? So I don't understand the math and how it breaks down, but it's like the mineral content in water is based on like per unit type thing. And in the purified water that you get in the U.S., you typically have like 500 minerals per unit of water. Per gram of unit of water. I don't know how it breaks down. Your normal bottled water has like a very low amount of minerals.
Okay.
What you're actually supposed to have is what's in the Siberian water, which is like 7,500 minerals per however they measure the water. And she said you can tell the difference because when they're pouring this Siberian water, like you can see the thickness of it. I think she said in the episode they almost described it as almost like an alcoholic beverage. I can't remember which one now. But like,
vodka.
I honestly want to say it was like a vodka, which makes sense because it's Russia. But anyway, like you could see the difference in the thickness of the water because it was so full of minerals. And that's what you really actually want, a water that is chock full of minerals. But the purification process that we have for our water actually strips, which makes total sense because...
So why is it illegal, though?
I don't know, and she didn't know either.
Okay,
like, that wasn't really explained
really
of why it's illegal. Here's the thing. When she was describing this, what I thought was, oh my gosh, it's not just Lay's that cheats us out of things and gives us a bag full of air.
It's our water.
Apparently it's our water that also cheats us.
Oh my word.
And gives us, like, a third of water to 2/3 chlorine and injected minerals into the water because they freaking can't just give us the actual thing.
See.
This is the whole American food system is,
Man, that
let's
just
like
makes me
dilute
frustrated.
everything. No, and I told her, I'm like, okay, this on one hand makes me very frustrated. On the other hand, now this is information that I'm going to tuck away and like now
all the more reason to go to Siberia. No,
well, yes, but now it's just information I'm going to tuck away and like pull out at dinner parties because I'm that type of person who. Let's have a conversation on the topic of water.
Okay, so this is probably one of our other obsessions that isn't. They're not quite obsessive, but you and I will just learn random facts about things that we.
I am a sucker
enjoy.
for trivia.
Yeah,
and fun facts.
Like I just like when I learned something random of like elephants have shorter ears. I can't remember what exactly it was about elephants that I learned, but I learned something about elephants. For the longest time, it was just like, did you know?
It's just fun. It's very random things.
It was like shorter trunks is I think what why some elephants have shorter trunks and things like that. Yeah, and those things just fascinate me, especially when it comes to biology, because that was probably my favorite thing in science was biology, and so a lot of those facts of, did you know this? Blah blah blah. But yes, you and I have this.
It's
collect
fascinating.
Random facts in our heads. All right, we need to finish this episode.
Yeah, now that we've gone from obsessions to books to language to I don't even know what, and now water, I think it's time to wrap this episode up.
Tie a bow
On whatever this junk has been. To make it a little bit more presentable.
Here's your bag of coal for Christmas.
I don't know what we'll end up posting on our Instagram, but we will end up posting something on our Instagram, so go over to follow us at Time to Talk.
Leave us a rating and review. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Share with your friends. Let them in on the fun conversations.
Save the water tidbit for your next dinner party.
Exactly.
And until next time,
cue the cool music.